Thank you for that, in a sense. And we don't get, I don't often get the opportunity to say that I think I'm slightly younger than you, if I may say. I don't want to upset anybody already from that side of it. Maybe even 1 year older than you, let's say, from that angle.
I'm supposed to handle that flash.
I think for leaders it's important to acknowledge our first generation people, the leaders who actually shaped our thinking and also our development in that sense. And often we don't get a chance to do that, so thank you for that. I'm here actually today as a leadership in the sense of because of racism, if I may say so. Because originally when I left school, I started as a design engineer. I'm very more of mechanical design. There's only two things my parents wanted me to do, and Asian people know this. Either you become a doctor or an engineer, absolutely. So I managed to become an engineer, and my mother hasn't forgiven me for that. She thinks I'm just enter this wacky world of equality and human rights, which she doesn't understand at all, in a sense, from her perspective. So I'm still, in bad books with her. But I was so proud when I became a design engineer, and it was a struggle, but I became a design engineer after leaving school. Then I was, basically my mother always wanted a house with a garden. We lived in an area in Greater Manchester which was mainly an Asian and African Caribbean area, in a sense. 60% of black community lived in there from it. But they're all terrace houses. And I'm talking about the 80s. I'm trying to paint you a picture of the 80s really, when I grew up in the environment. Because leaders, actually, their thinking is based on the environment that they grew in, the experience that they've had. That's what I believe. I don't think leaders can just learn knowledge and say, I'm a leader. They're still making decisions at the NHS at senior level because of the experiences, where they come from, their childhood, who they connected with. That's been an important part. So I grew up in an environment which at that time was very, very racist. BNP were very active. EDL runs even around at that time. Combat 18, Jack Tower, remember these things and these things. So we were in a very, very stressful environment. So when we moved out, the first week we moved out, and I have two sisters and a brother. They were young at that time. First week I remember watching TV and 4 bricks came to the window. Smashed completely the window, and we had big windows, bigger than that. And I was just like, I couldn't speak for about 10 minutes. My sister was crying. One of my sisters, the brick hit her on the head. She was bleeding. My mother was in the kitchen, thank God, and she was safe. My father was upstairs. That was the first experience of people telling us that we were not welcome. And that was the first experience that I had, in a sense, such an overt attack. Although I had experience in school. I remember walking to school because my father didn't have a car. And in school we used to get beaten up on the way to school. There was 15 Asians and 3 African Caribbean students at that time. And on a regular basis, there was only one alleyway we could get to the school. And that alleyway in the mornings we used to get beaten up. Not every day. It was actually in about 2 or 3 weeks' time we used to get beaten and so forth. So the school life actually also shaped my thinking, the way I am today. The passion I have for equality and fairness. They go back to school, they go back to the working environment, they go back to the places I grew up, in the sense of it. I also remember instances like sitting like this in a room, in a classroom of maths, and I'm hopeless at maths. Can't do maths. The reason why I can't do maths is because I skipped maths, because that's where the racial abuse was. There's 2 of us in maths, myself and George, with BME background, and both of us, we never used to attend maths. Empty seats next to both of us. Classroom was packed. The only empty seats were next to us 2. And that made a massive impact on me. I'll never forget that. That's still in my mind, in a sense of it. So we used to skip the maths lesson. Never picked it up. Hence, actually I don't understand maths at all. I'm hopeless at it. Very good at English, very good at strategy, very good at writing. But mathematics, finance, I've never become a finance director, I know that. I won't do it. So the experience at schools, but the leadership, because there are leaders in school, the teachers are leaders. Not one teacher actually challenged that behavior. So the leaders failed me there at that time in the education. And the leaders also failed me with regards to policing when the bricks were coming through our houses. And that's just one incident. The other instance where I dogged her coming in the mornings to the letterboxes. So when my mother come downstairs, she was basically, on a regular basis, she used to have dogged her coming through. Besides the, I remember once when I was walking with my mother, eight young men lined up on the pavement, 4 on this side and 4 on that side. When my mother went through and I went through, we got spat at. So at that time, I grew in that environment because that was the environment of racism taking place. So yes, I was a design engineer, I was an apprentice design engineer, loved every bit of it. But when I used to come home, I was always worried. Why isn't the police taking action? So I started challenging the police officers, and the chief constables, and the sergeants, and the superintendents. I became quite radical. Not because I wanted to, because the conditions made me radical in that sense. And I had to make no apologies for that, because I couldn't see my family going through on a regular basis subjected to so much hatred. And I couldn't understand why people actually would hate a family that they don't even know. We just moved in. What made people pick up bricks and throw them through the windows? As a human being, I would not do that. I couldn't do that. I couldn't pick up bricks and start throwing them windows. I wouldn't go around spitting at women or removing my sister's hijab and the chick wears on the floor. I wouldn't do that. I couldn't do that as a human being. But yet, there were people in our society who choose to do that. They went out of their ways to do that because we were the only black family in that sort of environment, in that street at that time. Thank God things have changed. But coming back to the leadership question, where were the leaders when we needed them at that time in the police service? Where were the sergeants who should have been monitoring that place? Where were the police officers who should have been on a regular basis? I knew who were doing that. There were the people who lived in the same streets. The gangs came from the same streets. And the same gang went to the same schools. That's why we were being beaten up. So for me, in that environment, I started to question the leadership. I started to question lots of people, saying, why are they failing us? So I'm trying to learn from leaders who actually failed the community and individuals. The best thing for a leader for me is that they would never ever let the patient down or let the members of the public down, because as a leader they have a responsibility. The police has a responsibility as leaders, the chief constable, to protect us. And we as NHS professionals have a responsibility to look after the patients and be caring and be compassionate. So those were the type of things that were happening in that environment. I then moved on to worked in the voluntary sector for 5 years. You'll find if you have seen my biography, I don't know whether people have.
Yeah, I've sent it out. Yeah.
It's not a career in the NHS, sadly, I'm afraid in a sense. But that was actually chosen by me on purposely, because I said that I would go in an organisation and be there for 5 to 6 years, because I learn better when I'm actually in a new environment than becoming comfortable for 15 to 25 years in the same environment. And secondly, I also knew I would not get promoted after 5 years. And that's true. Because one of the leaders' questions we're talking about is the leaders have to be genuine. You have to be true to yourself if you're going to be a good leader. Because there'll be pressure for you to conform on a daily basis. I had that pressure even now. When I moved into the NHS 5 years ago, my own Director General started calling me Mac in a meeting. And so I thought, what do? Do I actually, all the staff are there, there's 150 people, they just joined, I've just joined, everybody just joined, and he says, oh, and I want to welcome Mac to NHS England, the region office. So being somebody from my background where I am, who've been fighting for saying there is an issue about identity and pride and confidence. Don't try and make me something that I'm not. If you change Maksud to Mac, it's a complete meaning to it. My mother's given me a name called Maksud, which is someone who's got a vision, someone with an aim. That's why it is Maksud. Someone who understands, followed by an M. Very powerful. For me, it's a very powerful name. You know, in a sense. I don't want that diluted. I would never go around calling you know, John, you know, Abdul Hakim, would I? Why would I do that? I wouldn't do that. So in my psyche, I still can't understand why certain leaders still try to conform us. And you will get the same challenges. Please don't get me wrong in the sense of, if you like being shortened by your name, that's fine if you're comfortable with that. But for me, it's been very important that as BME leaders, that you are true to yourself, to your identity, so others learn from that. And I was so saddened when I was in the Home Office, a number of police officers used to call themselves Mo, from Muhammad to Mo. From Jagtar to Jags even, in a sense. I used to be really disappointed in that, because I used to be a police inspector, so every time we used to do inspections, you know, people used to say to me, oh, you got Mo next, Mr. Ahmed. And I used to say, who can call himself Mo? You know, what's his proper name? Or if we don't know his proper name, it's Mo Summer, or he's on the list next time. So even if you're demeaning an individual's name, if you don't know their name, what type of respect can you be giving to that individual? And why should we, or why should I, I'm talking about myself, my view is, why should I lower myself and just say, you have my permission to call me Mac without even asking my permission? That's not true. So I was in this 150 people there, I'm saying, should I stand up and say, oh, please call me Mac soon, don't call me Mac? And then I thought about it and I thought, no, I'll drop him an email. Then I thought, no, this is too formal. I'll go and see him. So I knocked at his door and said, have you got a minute? He said, yeah, of course I have. I said, something's been bothering me, I just need to have a chat with you about it. He says, come on in, sit down. I said, you know when you refer to me Mac? He said, yeah, did I do something wrong? Goes, yeah, you did actually. I said, my name isn't Mac, so please don't call me Mac. Because if you call me Mac, my own staff will start calling me Mac. Then all of a sudden I'll become Mac. Not only that, I was offended because our next door neighbour, dogs called Mac. So I'm saying to him, that's not my name. And in fairness to him, I gave him to, he says, I do apologise. Max said, I'm really, really sorry. I just shortened it without even thinking about it, without even asking you about it. Now, what I'm trying to say is that leaders make mistakes, and this is just a minor example. I can give you loads of other examples. But they are human beings at the end of the day. They are our colleagues. They'll learn from us, and I will learn from them in regards to it. So you, as leaders from a BME background, you will be in those positions where people will try to conform you. Whether it's your clothes, whether it's your naming system, whether it's the food that you eat, there will be a regular way of conformation. My advice to you would be true to yourself, because true leaders are true to themselves. And you have to do that for your own self-respect. If you feel comfortable in that, then that's fine. You can say that, I don't mind that. That's okay to do that with regards to it. So with regards, in a sense, of moving on from the voluntary sector for 5 years, I went into the inspectors, police inspectors. After the tragic death of Stephen Lawrence, I had the pleasure of working with Doreen Lawrence and Mr. Lawrence and the other family. Now, there's leaders, without even going into more details about the way they handle themselves through a very tragic death. So the investigation that McPherson carried out, I was responsible for implementing those 153 recommendations across the country with the police service and the inspectorates. And what I learned from that was that leadership needs to have credibility. If you haven't got credibility, people will notice that. And the inspectorate, in the eyes of white officers, have a lot of credibility. I choose the words white officers very carefully, because in order to gain credibility, you need to have credibility from all officers. And at that time, the inspectors actually had failed Doreen Lawrence in the inspections, because there were inspections that they went out and said, actually the police force is not racist. There isn't a culture problem within the police service. Whereas McPherson actually came with the recommendation that the police service is institutionally racist. Now, that wasn't a new definition. One thing we learned from that is basically leaders need to listen to black people as well as white people, and they need to act on that. Black people have been saying that there is a cultural problem in the police service. There's a cultural problem in the NHS. There's a cultural problem in education. It doesn't need another investigation, massive investigation, spending millions of pounds to say that the education this institution racist, or the NHS got a problem. So leaders don't go around having reviews and research after research. They listen to their staff, and they'll take action on that. And they'll save money at the same time. So leaders got to listen and take action. That's one thing that leaders got to do if we want to progress with regards to that. And also as a BME, one of the things that with regards to survival, I've only got another 3 minutes to 4 times up already, is actually you market yourself, you protect yourself, because nobody's going to protect you. Because the more you climb the ladder, the more difficult it's going to become. Because you will be competing within the circle, as I call it. You'll be competing with friends of the friends who are on the interview panel. And they're going to have hard decisions to make. And if you're not credible, if you're not known to get to a director level, if you're very low profile, and you haven't delivered in programs, and you haven't achieved those programs, major programs, implemented them, made a difference to patients and carers and to members of the staff, then you've got nothing to take with you. But they're not going to promote you. They aren't going to sort of say to you and get you onto a conference and say, hey, it's wonderful, Maksud Ahmed. Because the senior you get, the more competition you become with all these. And it's professional competition. They're not telling you that. They're not saying to you, look, I'm competing with you. But automatically, when the next job comes up and you're on SMT, you are competing with the same person. So you have to take on your own. That's what I've done. I was just saying earlier on before, one of my strategies was when I first started in the NHS very quickly, when David Nicholson, I'd never heard of David Nicholson. On the second day, I went onto my calendar and found out where he was speaking. For the next 6 months, I found out where he was speaking, and I made it my business to be there at that conference. Secondly, I made a decision that I would be the first one to ask a question. I'm just giving you a simple question, a simple sort of strategy of getting to know very, very quickly. It's a risk strategy, don't get me wrong. Because you can ask the wrong question. You can get the wrong question or a stalker, you've had it here. So the first conference I went to, I put my hand up, microphone comes, and obviously they say, introduce yourself and where you're from, blah, blah, so Maksud Ahmed, blah, blah. They have a really inspiring speech, really love your speech. Always ask a safe question. Don't ask a difficult question that embarrasses them, because that's the wrong one in my view, in my strategy. Ask a simple question based on their speech. That's something that's meaningful. Second conference in 2 months' time, be the first to put your hand up again. The microphone comes, because it's the first 2 minutes that people hesitate. Nobody asks a question the first two. But once the first 2 questions gets going, then everybody's put their hands up. That's right. Lost the battle there, doesn't matter. But be the first to ask the question. On the 4th conference, after 6 months, he actually knew my name. He said, Maksud. Yeah. So therefore, the strategy that I was trying to bring in to get to the most senior person, and I've done the same thing with Simon Stevens on the conference calls.
He calls you Jack.
First ones, yeah. I need to speak to him about that. These are simple tactics, actually, as a leader, that you need to bring in to know where you're getting into, in a sense. And that can be applied other places as well. There's other things I've done basically in regards to when I was on the top leaders. You have a responsibility as BME leaders when you come back to share your knowledge. To share your knowledge, help and support your colleagues. Because if you're not doing that, then we will not progress. One of the reasons I'm struggling and Jags is struggling and the few leaders that we have are struggling is because we don't have a strong network. I cannot pick up a phone and say to somebody who's a financial biz person from a BME background, I can confidently trust in saying, Jagta, I need your help on this, I'm lost in this finance as a director. I can't pick up a phone and go say to somebody who's in specialized commissioning from a life that I can trust in saying, you know, Abdullah or Ranjit, I'm struggling with this, how do I do this? But my colleagues can. Every colleague, I have 6 SMT colleagues, every one of them got friends in the circle that they can pick up a phone and they can have access to information. And information is one of the most important things that make you survive and powerful with data, intelligence, looking at what's happening in the future, horizon building. All these things are mechanisms that you need to develop yourself. Because believe me, colleagues, there'll be other people aren't going to do it for you. Because you're in competition with them. For the next job that comes up there, you'll be sitting there on the interview panel and they'll be behind you coming into that room. I'm not trying to say you end up fighting with them or, you know, but you have to promote yourself looking after from that side of it. I've got a lot more to say, really, and it's a very, really passionate night. And this is the first time, actually, I'm in not a minority, if you know what I mean. Because that is also a difference. Because if you spend time with being a minority within a majority, it's very, very difficult. It can become very distressful. Because people don't understand where you're coming from.
No, they don't.
You know, I can't relate to, I mean, I was just saying before, and women leaders have a different style. You know, I've got 6 women who are leaders. I'm the only BME there, the only male there. Yeah. And I know everything about handbags. Anybody wants to know about handbags? I'm an expert on handbags. But that relationship building, that style and relationship building of women is completely different to men, in a sense on it. They have a different style. But do they talk about issues of BME women? Do they bring that on the table? That's a question and a challenge that we need to have from that side. Listen, I could go on forever, but thank you very much. Thank you very much for